welcome to Edison Open House Transport Futures 2021. Now, in this session, a really fascinating company called Circulor. It uses blockchain and AI to verify responsible sourcing and due diligence in raw material supply chains. And with me is Carolyn Langfelt, who is a client partner. Carolyn, welcome.
Hi, Vivian. Thank you. Very happy to be here.
So this is a fascinating company. Just explain what Circulor does and why what it does is so important.
Sure. So what we do is we offer a software solution that enables our customers to track the flow of goods through supply chains to demonstrate responsible sourcing and to support climate neutrality objectives.
And this is a major issue with batteries, of course, because the rare earth metals that are used, some of them are mined in really very difficult circumstances indeed. I'm thinking, for instance, about manganese in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, I'm based in Germany, and of course, I have a very strong focus on the automotive industry, especially the upcoming EV industry. And yes, I mean, the electromobility is a challenge, but at the same time, it's a great chance. And as you mentioned, there are many conflict materials which are in these EV batteries. But I think that now, I mean, we kind of have a wide canvas. So now we have the possibilities, the opportunity to make things right. And I think we can do that by bringing transparency into these supply chains and making sure that the conflict minerals we use are not conflict minerals anymore, but are coming from certified sources and coming from mine sites we can trust.
And Carolyn, what sort of companies are you working with at the moment?
We have a very strong focus on the automotive sector. So one of our first clients was, for example, Volvo Cars. For Volvo, like, we started out tracing cobalt for them. So their first fully electric vehicle, the XC40, and by now we trace cobalt, mica, nickel, and more materials are to follow. And then Daimler is one of our clients. Then we have Jaguar Land Rover. So we really started strong downstream with a lot of automotive customers. But now, like over the years, we really saw a change. And now we also have many upstream producers. For example, we just signed Vulcan Energy Resources, which is an Australian mining company, but they will start producing lithium in the Upper Rhine Valley in Germany at the end of the year. So there is a shift also to upstream customers because responsible sourcing becomes more, proving responsible sourcing becomes more and more relevant also for upstream.
And are you seeing companies take action where your technology has revealed that there is a breach of, of resource provenance?
Yes, definitely. And we get a lot of feedback that the information or the data we provide, like, really helps them to engage with the supply chain participants and prepares them for a more informed conversation. So, for example, Daimler wants to reach climate neutrality, like, of their new car fleet by 2039. And so they need to know about the CO2 emissions, and I'm talking scope 1, 2, 3 along their supply chain, of course, before they reach CO2 neutrality. And that's information which for a long time was enclosed, so they had no access to it. So, like, the first step is retrieving this information from the supply chain.
So can you explain your platform and your offering in more detail?
Sure. So as I said, what we do is that we trace resources from the source. You already mentioned mine site until the final product, which in a lot of cases is the EV battery in the automotive. And we do that by creating a digital twin, which then follows the physical resource kind of like a shadow. And I really like the image of a shadow because, like a shadow, the digital twin also mirrors every change the resource does. And yeah, we use a variety of new technologies. You already mentioned distributed ledger technology or blockchain, for example, to store data, to enable data exchange and encryption, but also to make sure that only valid data enters our system. And yeah, for making sure, we also use machine learning, for example, to encode business processes in our solution, or facial recognition to register mine workers, or GPS fencing to make sure that the resources are only coming from a specific location, a location we defined before. And what really makes us different, because of course there are many traceability solutions out there, is that we actually follow the flow of material. And so you can say that we follow each individual bag of cobalt all the way to the EV battery, or each bag of lithium or mica, or whatever we are looking at. And of course, like, we picked supply chains which are very complex, and also resources which change their physical and chemical composition. So we are not following a banana, which is a banana at the beginning, and when you harvest it, and the banana when you eat it. But like, for example, if you take cobalt, you extract the ore cobalt, but then it changes in the refining process to cobalt hydroxide. And so you can't really, attach a tag to the ore, but you have to define business processes. But you really have to have a detailed digital twin to make sure that the physical or the digital twin always matches the physical asset.
So why is the use of a distributed ledger system like blockchain so critical to this process? I mean, you said obviously you can't attach a tag, particularly as it something that changes throughout its life cycle. But why blockchain? Why not some other technology?
I mean, blockchain is such a suitable technology. For various reasons. Like, first of all, it lets you define very precisely access rights, because like, we are dealing here with highly sensitive data, and a transparent supply chain doesn't mean that all supply chain participants have access to the same data. So who has access, who is writing access, who's reading access, needs to be exactly defined. And then also talking about sensitive data, blockchain also gives us the possibility to encrypt data. So that it is stored, but can only be accessed under certain conditions by certain people. And also blockchain lets us store data off-chain and on-chain, which, like, if we talk, for example, about the GDPR, becomes very relevant. And what blockchain is most famous for, of course, is its immutability. And so in other words, that data stored on the blockchain can't be tampered with, or if it's being tampered with, then you can definitely see it, like nothing happens unseen. And that is, on the one side, that's great, and that's what made blockchain famous, as I said, but also that's a big challenge, because you have to make sure that only verified data enters the blockchain. And that's also why we not only work with blockchain, but with a variety of other technology, and because you have to close the gap between the digital and the physical asset. And as I said, I think I mentioned that already, we use, for example, machine learning, facial recognition, GPS fencing to close this gap.
So this is obviously an environmental initiative that's very important, but blockchain and these distributed ledger systems don't come without their own environmental impact. And people often say that the vast compute power that you need to operate blockchain is in itself an environmental issue. How do you handle that?
That's of course true, but I mean, we are already, I think, we are very advanced when it comes to blockchain technology. So this is true, for the very beginning of the blockchain technology, but we are using Hyperledger Fabric, which is a permission-based, it's an enterprise blockchain, and it's permission-based. So that means that not every transaction has to be verified by all nodes. And exactly this verification process, so this proof of concept or proof of work is what costs a lot of energy, but that's not part of of the distributed ledger technology we are using. So that's not something we are facing, fortunately.
Now, you work with a lot of leading automotive OEMs. Is demand for your services being driven by electrification? And is it inherently more challenging to ensure sustainability of the EV supply chain versus, the ICE future of transport?
Yeah, I think I would see it a little bit differently. So the electromobility revolution is costly, and billions of dollars from companies and governments are flowing into it. But of course, we're doing it for a good reason, because there is no other way if we want to keep living on our planet. And so if you're setting up a new system for our planet, then I would say you should aim to do it right from the very beginning on, and not do the same mistakes you did in the past. And I also think that customers are expecting sustainable practices nowadays from companies, and I think younger and future generations will expect, or will have even higher expectations. And so I don't think it is more challenging to ensure sustainability of the EV supply chain versus ICE, but I think there's a bigger demand for it, and also a bigger consciousness.
Yes, people are very, very conscious of this at the moment. I mean, this is really driving the ESG agenda. Is there anybody else in this space? Because Circulor seems to me, and I'm not in this market, but it seems to me a really novel company.
Yeah, we are a very novel company, and right now we are in the very fortunate position to be world leader in traceability.
And traceability, we are already beginning to see in European legislation a demand for traceability. So, we've got the ESG movement, and now we've got the regulatory movement going behind it. And it's got to be the way it's going to go, as you've already indicated.
And those regulations are very important for us. Like, as I said, automotive industry is a big focus of us. And in 2022, the European battery regulation is going to come out, which demands exactly what we are doing already with Volvo, with Daimler. So we are well prepared for it, but I think it will also help companies that it's regulated, that the data which they have to provide is defined, and to give them some more guidance.
I mean, you're a company that is driven by ESG. I mean, that's in some ways your whole raison d'etre is ESG. But are there any other ESG priorities beyond environment that you're particularly concerned with?
Like I already mentioned, human rights, child labor. So like any ethical questions are very important for us, of course, because like if we speak about conflict materials, cobalt, mica, you unfortunately still have the situation that in many mines there are working children. Now,
you've, the market leader, you've thought of this brilliant idea and you're way ahead, but how do you see your sector developing in the future?
You mean the traceability technology sector, or more the
traceability?
Yeah, well, I think for a long time, traceability was something good to have, but I think nowadays it's something, well, it's turning into a must-have.
And do you see many other companies coming into the market as well, or do you see yourselves? Well, obviously, clearly you're out in front, but do you see other people joining?
Yeah, of course, there are other companies also looking into that matter, and I think it just kind of proves that we're on the right track.
You've got a very, very interesting company, and we're asking all the people who've contributed to this series of interviews what their vision is of the future of transport. So what's your vision of the future of transport?
Yeah, it's kind of, as I mentioned already, like I'm a big fan of electromobility, and I think it's the right way to go. But I think we should do it right all the way. So starting at the source and take responsibility for the resources we use, and also for the circumstances in the mines or at the production site, and then take it all the way. Also thinking about transport emissions, of course. Like, does it make sense to have global supply chains, or shouldn't we, as also the European battery regulation requested, look more into recycling? Like, how can we reuse resources, because resources are not endless. So my vision for mobility is to look at the overall concept and to just to think it through, like, every step of the way.
It's a fascinating vision of the future. The circular economy is clearly very important, and you are making sure that the circular economy is an ethical economy. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.